Okay,
Yes.
let's take our thoughts not too far and stay in Germany, but go to the men's ATP 500 that's taking place in Munich this week. We are having the final set. It's set between Alexander Zverev versus Ben Shelton. Actually, before we go into Munich, it has to do with Munich, but we should
Hmm.
probably spend a little bit of time talking about Ben Shelton himself. Because I don't know if we mentioned this in part one, but he had a little bit of a moment that happened in Monte Carlo in doubles, where
Mm.
a moment after his doubles match with Rohan Bopana, I believe they actually made it quite far in that tournament, and it's an interesting little partnership because Rohan Bopana is like 40 and Ben Shelton's like 22 or
It
something
is
like that.
funny. Everything about it makes me giggle a little bit.
I like it, but Bopana kind of had to have his like daddy cap. I don't know. Bopana's definitely a daddy. I think literally and figuratively, actually.
Right. I mean, he could be someone's grandfather here in a few years, frankly.
He has it going for him. But he
Right.
kind of had to dilute a situation between Ben Shelton and opponent across the court, Vavasori, I believe, of Italy.
It was.
There
Yep.
there was an early kind of exchange and rally in the match where Vavasori took a ball to the chest that Ben Shelton hit, and there was like the very traditional apology that Ben Shelton gave. Even Shelton's partner Bopana was also like, "Hey, sorry, that didn't mean to happen." And then fast forward to the end of the match, I guess Vavasori was still salty about it and kind of didn't want to shake Ben's hand, but Ben was like, "Dude, it's doubles, get over it." Like that was like one of the first points of the match almost. Why are we at the handshake now? Still bringing it up, and the mics caught a lot of that interaction. And the biggest part that is kind of going viral, at least in tennis Twitter and tennis land, is Ben calling his opponent soft for kind of bringing that up on the handshake and being salty about it. I just wanted to pose this to you because
Hmm.
we're, I don't know where we are in the Ben Shelton of it all because Ben Shelton feels like he's a very relevant and almost always polarizing figure now on the ATP tour. But how did you feel about that specific moment in like the Ben Shelton arsenal of memes and stuff that is growing?
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting. Ben Shelton seems to be very polarizing in a lot of ways. I think he's one of the most entertaining personalities and players on tour. I
Mhm.
understand why he rubs some people the wrong way, but excuse me. I think people like Ben Shelton are important on the tour and will grow the game and bring in new fans. So I'm all for people like Ben Shelton. And I actually really have enjoyed watching his tennis in person. And I was also on his side in this situation. I think for a true doubles player who is complaining about getting hit when you likely get hit pretty much every tournament, I would assume at some point you're getting close to being hit as a doubles player with all the serves and the quick hands and
Mhm.
everything. I was a little bit like Vavasori. I don't know. It was a bit of an eye roll for me. I'm like, aren't you supposed to be this like top doubles guy? Like,
Like
I
at
didn't
least
love
top
it.
10. Yeah.
Right. And he's, he does play with Sarah Irani. So, I mean, he surely has seen returns coming whipping at him very quickly when he's playing on court with Sarah Irani and that serve. So I was a little bit surprised and I just felt like there must have been more to it. The conversation about Ben Shelton using the word soft, I do know I don't normally, I would say in like the quote unquote real world, I don't love when people use the word soft. I do think
Hmm.
there's a connotation there about kind
Hmm.
of weakness and being a man versus
The
being like a
masculinity,
feminine
all
man.
of that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. That does kind of hit a little bit weird with me. I will say Ben Shelton lifted up his shirt to show his muscles in that moment. So it was kind of like, he kind of was
He
saying like,
diluted it.
listen,
He diluted it
yeah,
really quickly.
right. And he's like, listen, like I'm ripped and I'm strong and there's nothing soft about my body. You clearly need to get on my level in terms of being in shape. That's actually how I kind of read it. So I was more on his side. And again, like, I don't know. I kind of thought it was funny, but I do understand like that language isn't my favorite. What did you think?
Yeah, I I feel similarly. Like I wasn't offended by the language at first until I kind of sat with the connotation of it. Of like it's a lot of queer men can relate to being either called soft in front of their face, behind their face, or just kind of described as such if they aren't necessarily the machoist man in the building. And that's not great. It's a little toxic. But in that situation, I can see how he jumped to that term because one, the point had already passed, like well past, and
Yeah.
two, like this is something that happens in tennis. He even said that Ben was like, "It's not a baseball I hit you with, like it's a
Right.
tennis ball." You kept playing, and then what makes matters worse is that Vavasori went to Instagram and said that because of that
I
incident,
can't.
he didn't name Shelton, but he said because of an incident at the early part of a match, he had to pull out from Barcelona the next week due to like some kind of rib stressor, and like
It's a lot.
that is like I want to empathize if your rib hurts, but I really don't believe it was Ben Shelton swinging forehand that caused the rib issue for you to not play Barcelona. So to go to Instagram and do that is where I kind of was like, okay, yes, that's a little that's soft. I want to respect people's injuries, but that didn't just watching it in real time. It didn't seem like anything bad had happened. So yeah, I'm on Ben's side. I'm not on his side on all of the language he uses. I have to be clear because there is a post that unfortunately sticks with me that he made
Yes.
on election night. And I don't have to spend too much time on it because it's kind of if you know, if you know. But he made something to the sort of tune of like, no matter who wins, God is in control on election night. And it was like, of all the elections in the world and all the days of the world to post that, that wasn't great because it kind of sends off a message, if you know what I mean. So I've been kind of looking at him sideways, and other people, quite frankly, I'm actually giving him a little bit more benefit of the doubt than the people I talk to in my circles. They're very much so like, I'm not rooting for Ben Shelton. And he's kind of become a polarizing figure. But I have a soft spot for lefties, which I'll kind of circle back to a little bit later on. And I've watched Ben up close. So, you know, it's I'm caught in the middle.
Look, you have to choose your battles with these athletes, okay?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, but you're not going to agree with a lot of them. Right. That's not who I'm looking for as who I should vote for. I'm not looking at Ben Shelton or anyone on the ATP tour, if I'm being honest. That's not where I look to. I look for them for inspiration for things like what they're doing on court and their athleticism, how hard they work. Hello, their calf workouts. Hello, Lorenzo Musetti. But I will say, I also have warmed a little bit to Ben Shelton because I became such a big fan of Trinity Rodman during the Olympics. What was it in 2024 last year? I just felt like she was such a fun and electric player to watch on the field and really was a huge asset to the women winning gold for America. I don't know much about her, obviously, outside of like she's Dennis Rodman's daughter and a few other things I've seen. I like her pink hair, so I don't know her deeply. I don't know what I'm sure she's said and done things that people are going to be screaming about, but like, I just really liked her and her energy on the field. So the fact that they're dating and I saw her in the stands, I think at this week at the tournament, I don't know. It kind of is a nice story to follow for me.
I wonder what made her choose Munich, like on his schedule. Like, hey, let's pack up the bags and go to Munich. Like,
I think she's injured. I think she's injured, and that's why.
Okay. Because based off of what I've been seeing from the tournament, you mentioned earlier, like you don't want to play tennis in long sleeve. That's what Ben's been doing.
Yes, exactly.
Ben has been he's been doing well though, because I kind of questioned when I went to Houston at the beginning of the month. I questioned why Ben wasn't there because he was defending champion. And now that 2 weeks have passed and he's gotten 4 straight European hardcourt wins. European hardcourt wins. Who am I? He's gotten 4 straight clay court wins on European soil, like leading to the French Open. That seems like a better decision now for him to skip Houston, go to Monte Carlo, and try to get that kind of clay underneath his feet. So we'll see what he does in the final. I think either way, it's a good week for him to kind of prove to himself that he can hang with. I wouldn't say it was the toughest competition in the world because it's an ATP 500. It's not 1,000 or second week of a slam, but still wins are wins. And he got 4 straight of them and finds himself in the final of a clay court event. So we'll see how that goes for Ben. And his opponent in the final is Zverev. Are some of the adjectives you use to describe Ben Shelton similar to Zverev, or am I making that up? Maybe.
I would say I have a lot more likeness to Ben Shelton than I do Alexander Zverev. Okay. Zverev, I think, is much more of a true villain on tour and not a fun villain. I'm obviously not a fan of his, and I just there's very little about him I like from obviously the off court stuff with the reports and allegations against him to really even on court. I felt like his game on court is just he's like a tall kind of pusher, which isn't my favorite type of player. And if I'm
is that a word?
Exactly, a tusher. And if I want to really just expose myself here, I used to think he was at least handsome back in the day, but he's aging like milk. So I don't even really get to enjoy much on that front. So I am not a fan of Alexander Zverev. And I will just say, yeah, I mean, you were talking about Ben Shelton getting wins. Didn't he beat Cerundolo today? That's a very good clay court
That
win.
is a good clay court win.
So I think he is getting confidence. Excuse me, my allergies are just killing me here in Atlanta. But